You're listening to Stimulus Tech Talk, a conversation-based podcast created by Stimulus Technologies that covers a range of topics related to business and technology.
Welcome to Stimulus Tech Talk. I'm Sherry Lip, the marketing manager at Stimulus Technologies, and I am excited for our topic today. It's a really interesting topic. We're going to be talking about the ethics of AI in business. And here with me to talk about it is our CEO, Nathan Whitaker. Hi, Nathan.
Hey, Sherry, and welcome everybody to the podcast today.
As we're getting, we talk about AI a lot, so this is an important topic, and probably a topic that's either on people's minds or it's going to be entering their minds as they start working with it more. Why is it important for businesses to start thinking about these things? Ethics.
About the ethics. And I think just kind of getting kicked off here is we'll probably have more questions that are left unanswered at the end of the podcast than what we answer today, because this is, I think, a difficult topic for society in general to discuss it or to resolve. And just to kick it off, this isn't a business related thing, but I was literally reading an article this morning in Wired magazine that they were talking about in social media. People are now taking images or videos or different things of known or these influencers or personalities, and now they're flooding social media with lookalikes or similarly faces and ideas. And so they've studied now like 1,000 of these accounts that they're publishing, deep fake or fake influencer accounts. And what it's doing is driving down revenue for these influencers, because now there's more of them out there, and unfortunately there are a lot more fake accounts. And so how do we as a society differentiate between real human interaction online and AI generated interaction? And the tech companies are having a really hard time keeping up with this. So it's kind of a pervasive issue, and it's costing people real money that are trying to produce content. And you might not be an influencer and you're saying to yourself, well, it doesn't really affect my business. But the question is if you have a competitor that pops up and is suddenly generating content or ideas based off of maybe things that you published on your blog or your website, or they can reuse content that's publicly available, are you left competitively less or less competitive than one of your other competitors? And so I use competitor way too much in that sentence. But that's the question: is how do we potentially lose place in the marketplace to competitors that are using AI or using things that may not be ethically right, but they're using them. So, and then the question is in our own organization, if your employees or your organization in general is producing content that is AI generated and it's not accurate, or it's misleading information, or maybe it's copyright information that's being reused. The question is can your organization be held accountable for the use of that material? And so, I think us as organizations, legitimate organizations, need to question what information we're putting out there so that we can avoid this reputational damage or potentially legal damage by using this information that we shouldn't be using, that's generated by AI. So, I mean, lots of questions you have to kind of go through as an organization. You want to be competitive. You certainly want to stay on top of your game as an organization and use these new technologies. And you don't want to lose out to your competitors, but on the other side, you want to make sure you're doing it ethically. And I guess that's what we're trying to get into today.
To start with one of the concepts, it fits in, when you're talking about social media where people are stealing influencers' content or their likeness. So And from a business standpoint, how important do you think transparent, because they're obviously, I've seen people interact with them not realizing they think they're interacting with the actual influencer. So where does the transparency come in? How transparent do you think people need to be about using these tools from a business standpoint?
I think this is a personal opinion. I think it's best if we notify people if we're using AI to generate content, or at least have a policy as an organization or what you're going to do. So, most compliance in general, kind of going back to cybersecurity and compliance, most compliance is based off of the rules that the organization itself set that is within the framework of the overarching organization, the compliance organization, or the compliance framework. And I think it's the same way here. Is as an organization, you just need to decide what you're going to do and then stick with it. If you want to, as an organization, just say we're going to put out content and not say it's AI, then that's fine. If that's what the legal framework is currently, or if you want to say, this content was assisted by AI or completely generated by AI, or this chatbot, on your website is AI backed. I don't think it's a bad idea. And then the person making that interaction can choose whether or not to continue the interaction with that AI system or not. And some people will be like, "Hey, this is cool. I want to, interact with an AI bot and see what it can do." Or other people say, "No, I want to talk to a real person." But certainly don't fake it. We ran into this instance when we were testing out some AI systems, that I personally asked the AI and said, "Hey, is this AI?" And the AI system said, "No, I'm a real human being trying to help you out." And quickly went into the back end and say, "No, you're an AI bot, and if somebody asks you, you need to respond that you are AI." And that was quickly resolved. But those are, just ensure that you're not deceiving the public, and whatever your stance is, just make it clear, to as an organization that that's what you're going to do.
So I'm assuming we probably need to double check our AI, especially when it's coming to a customer service standpoint.
For sure.
I need to make sure we know what the AI is saying. So we've talked about this a little bit before. When it comes to collecting personal data with using AI, how do we bridge that gap between a better customer service experience and privacy?
I think it's essential, and we've talked about this before, that as a company, we're using private AI systems that are following strict guidelines. And so if you are using a free version of ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude or one of these systems that are out there, it's using your interactions to train future models. And if you use that system to interact with customers, their interactions could be used to program future models too. And so it's essential that you're using a system that will protect client data and client interactions. And when you pay for the system, it's more likely that they're going to have protections in place around it. But I think it's essential for us to ensure that too. So, whatever data that they're collecting, whatever information that we're collecting, it's important that that is kept private. And then, if your organization has some compliance framework around it, whether it's like, a California entity, for example, has the California Compliance Framework, or Privacy Act. And so, there's these different compliance organizations that require better compliance and better data privacy, and ensuring whatever system you're using is following that compliance framework. So GDPR, CCPA, HIPAA, there's a lot of frameworks that require organizations to ensure compliance. So make sure that whatever system you're using for client interaction or client data follows those same guidelines.
Yeah, so when it comes to compliance, we're really just on the same rules. There's more tools involved.
For sure.
So if AI makes a mistake, let's say you are using it to help you with content or doing something with the customer data. If AI makes a mistake, where does accountability come in, and how can businesses help prepare themselves for that?
I think accountability is still on that organization. I mean, I don't. It's just like if one of your employees makes a mistake, you as an organization is also responsible for that. So, I don't know. This is a good question that you bring up. Our insurance policies that you might have, like errors and emissions assurance that you can get as an organization, does that follow into the systems, your AI systems? And that's a good question. Maybe we should ask a insurance person that, if that. I would think that maybe insurance would cover it because it's part of the whole operating system of the company to use AI. But good question to ask your insurance company if it would cover an error. But in the end, it's the organization that's responsible for all output. So, ensuring that data is correct, ensuring that the information you're putting out and the work that you're doing is accurate, for your clients is on the organization itself.
And a big topic, when it comes to the ethics of AI is, as it's generating content, the content itself might be original, but it's borrowing from people's styles or maybe terminology and stuff like that. How far do you think AI can be used, and what's the business responsibility in that, from your standpoint, when it comes to those kinds of things?
Yeah, I think there was an article, I didn't read it in depth the other day, but Google supposedly scrapped their song making AI system that they were working on uh, because they found that too much copyrighted information was making it into the songs that it was producing or the music that it was producing. Now, certainly, us as humans, you go to school, if you're a musician, you study lots of different other musicians that have come up through time, and even if you ask like a rock band, one of the common questions is when a DJ is interviewing a rock band, hey, who influenced you? And they name, oh, I was influenced by Nirvana and some other Soundgarden and these bands from the 90s, and now I'm producing music that's in that style. The question that becomes is that creativity based off of somebody else's style, or is it specifically copying that style? And AI is, I think, much better at just copying the style rather than creatively using it, because all AI is doing is building a statistical model based off of the information that's received, and it's producing a result based off of that model. And it's just math in the end. It's not creativity. So I think AI has a bigger problem on a copyright standpoint than humans do, because it's influence, but it's also just taking that raw statistical model and producing new content. So I think you can't, even though AI looks creative, it's not. It's still just based off of information that's received and just compiling a model, based off of this, or producing a statistical result based off of that model that's created over time. So yeah, can't. There's a difficulty here, and I think now here's where it gets different. Is if I'm a writer or I'm an artist and I create a model based off of what I produced in the past, that then I'm using a system based off of my creative license that I've used, and then that's my model, and I can use it to produce new content. Um, One of the early podcasts that we had on, we had the president of Forbes Books that was talking about this, and that's what they're doing from a book writing standpoint. is saying, okay, if you've produced a lot of content, if you've blogged a lot, if you've written other books, we can load that and make that your model, and then it's a much easier to produce new content. So if you say, produce this in my voice based off of my content, then that's significantly better than saying just produce this new content based off of all publicly available data. So I think there's a very nuanced difference there, but I think it's enough to say what's right and what's wrong on future content.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine it comes down to some people's personal ethics, but it's also, I mean, inundated with ads. You can scroll through Facebook. If you ever even thought about writing a book, all of a sudden you're getting ads like, get your book written, in a month. And I imagine it can be very tempting. So I also, there's a matter of personal ethics in there. I think, educating yourself on AI is very important.
Yeah, I actually, just for the fun of it, because I do like experimenting around, interacting with generative AI systems. I actually did that same thing. I said, I want to write a dystopian sci-fi novel based off of, these few characters. And this is the basic plot. Write me an outline for this book. And then, once it wrote the outline, I had to start writing chapters, and it sounded great, but unfortunately I'm sure that story is based off of number of other stories that are out there, and if you compared it against a dystopian sci-fi novel, you would find a very similar plot line, although most of them are very much the same anyways, but it wouldn't be that much different than something that's already been produced. And so we have to be very careful on how it's producing that content, that creative content. Having it help you put together a business plan, or modifying a spreadsheet, or generating timelines for projects, things like that. I mean, that's a different thing. We're talking about creativity here, and potentially new content is a very different question.
So do you think that you can bridge that gap between your own, even using AI, between your own mind and having AI help you? How do you go about ensuring that you're doing that? Using your own ideas.
I think it would be like using a ghostwriter, to write a book. Let's use that as an example. So a lot of, politicians and famous people use a ghostwriter to, write their book, because, they don't, they're not a professional author. And so think of it that way, that using the AI system to interview you and to provide stories and history, and then have the AI system, put that together in a well-written and well-formatted content. But it's got to come from you. It's got, a ghostwriter doesn't go out and just, make up stories. I'm sure there are some ghostwriters that have done that, but in the end, the ghostwriter is, taking the verbal conversation or written comments or the stories that were given, and putting those in a logical format. I still like the comment of, it's a very knowledgeable, well-intended intern. And that's what AI is. You don't rely on it to be the expert, or to be the person with wisdom. It might have knowledge, it might have capabilities, but you, as the one using it, are the expert. You're the one that has the wisdom. You're the one that has the stories and the background to be able to tell it what to do. So that, I think if you just look at it with a different perspective, I think it helps identify how to use the generative AI to produce content.
I have heard, speaking of like tools to help, I know somebody who is a college professor, and they are struggling, with AI and work being turned in. But I have heard that there are some tools to help, including one that you can run through yourself to see if your AI content is original, or coming from you, or if it's pulled too much from other people.
I Yeah, and I think that's good to run through, and you can even ask the generative AI system, if it could compare it against public work. I know those systems aren't 100% accurate too. I mean, they've been flagging data, and I think false positives and false negatives. So I think it's important to ask it to provide sources if it's doing that, and so you can go back to the other work and see how close it is and if there's any problems there. I think the end of this, end of the story is that you can't just ask AI to generate something for you and then just post it or publish it as a book or use it in your business strategy. It's really on us as the experts to ensure that whatever it's producing is in line with what we would produce, and read through it and ensure that it's real, really what we want to produce. That's the end of in my mind today of where we're at, and it has been that way for 2 years now, is since generative AI came out.
Yeah, I mean, it can be so easy to use, and we have to be just as diligent as we ever have been in our work, to make sure we're putting out good, what we're intending to do for communication. Another topic that I have been looking at that's kind of come up, but I don't know if it hasn't. It's kind of taking hold, but not in a big way yet. Is that there is an environmental impact to the use of all the AI, because the pervasive use of it has created an impact on our environment, as far as like the server use and water and global warming.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's we worry as humans how much as human beings that we're consuming or hurting the environment, whether it's vehicles or farming, mass farming, things like that, ranching. But now we're taking these computers that we just look at our computer and say, well, this draws 100 watts. It's like a light bulb at my house, no big deal. But as things have moved more and more to the cloud, which AI is mostly in the cloud, the power consumption is off the charts for these AI systems. And you see big companies like Microsoft contracting with 3 Mile Island to restart their nuclear reactor to be able to provide power to their AI systems. And a lot of the other companies are looking to nuclear and looking to these high power generating systems to be able to power these data centers that are out there. As a consumer of it, we don't see it because all we see is our laptop or our desktop that we're interacting with. But as soon as you type a prompt, how much power is that taking in some data center somewhere? And I think it is a concern overall of are we shifting resources to these technologies that could be harming the environment and we're not realizing it. I for one I'm a fan of nuclear because I think it's a very clean, in the end, a clean way to produce power, much better than any of the fossil fuels. But we, in our country, in the United States, we haven't found a good program to manage our nuclear waste. One of my most interesting classes in college was the history of the Nevada test site. And I had the great opportunity to go out and tour the Nevada test site and tour Yucca Mountain. And it was a whole semester on the ethical battle of nuclear energy, and different perspectives and the good and the bad of the whole thing. So it's just a question we have to ask ourselves as a society as we shift the need over from producing power to transport us in vehicles, whatever it may be, to running these huge data centers that require so much energy. There is, every time you type into ChatGPT, there is a consumption of power. I have an interesting, kind of an aside, a friend of mine, and if anybody's interested in contact with them, they've put together a very interesting geothermal engine that can produce power using geothermal energy, specifically for data centers. And they're working on getting private funding to build their first data center. It's a very interesting project because it's completely green. I mean, they're using geothermal energy that's available now. they're building these data centers sustainably is their plan, so they can use green energy to build these things. And I mean, there's interesting projects that are out there, but it's certainly a concern that all of us have to have.
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. I think, especially for a business, it might be a conundrum for a business who is marketing themselves as an environmentally friendly in some way business, that this is a factor they might not have realized or considered yet. So, I mean, I also figured that, people will start working on those kinds of solutions
Yeah,
as the
I
problem arises.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, I'm a Boy Scout. I'm an Eagle Scout, and one of our things that we studied was the leave no trace principles. And I think as a society, my feeling is we need to leave the planet as we leave this Earth, ourselves better than we found it, and certainly have to find a way to get there. So certainly. I mean, we could get into a political discussion on climate change and things like that. That's not what this is for, but it is a consideration that these companies that are producing AI have to worry about. With these data centers, are they using power that's sustainable? And this is a geopolitical discussion too, because chip manufacturers and we're taking raw earth metals and things to produce all of this. It's not, every time you use a computer, use a cloud environment, it's not just happening on your device, it's happening somewhere else in a big data center that's power hungry, water hungry, cooling hungry. It's there is an environmental impact that we have to consider in all of this.
Yeah, and so, to wrap things up, how do you think businesses should they get started with like building an AI use policy for their business? How can they get started in adapting these principles into their operations?
I think that's the first step is develop. I like that idea. Developing an AI use policy, get it out there to your employees, and just define what the expectations are. We've been working on that at Stimulus internally, and our goal is to help our clients with that. As we're helping them build out compliance frameworks overall. So look to see for some examples of that. But I think that's the first step. And the next step is just exploring easy ways to implement AI inside your systems. I really like Microsoft Copilot because it is a secure way to interact with AI. It's part of the Microsoft ecosystem that a lot of businesses already have. But our goal as Stimulus is to help companies implement these in ways that they can do it today. And there's some really cool tools. So our plan is over the next while to have some workshops with this as far as our webinar series to help you generate some ideas on how you can implement it now. So be on the lookout for that. If you're subscribed to our newsletter, we'll have some information on upcoming webinars that will help you generate ideas and take actionable steps today to use AI inside your company, whether it's preparing for it with your data policy and cybersecurity policy or actual implementations and what you can do.
All right. Well, definitely an interesting topic. And thanks, Nathan. And thanks, everybody, for listening. If you have any AI concerns, please put them in the comments or reach out to us, and we'll be happy to talk about it in a future podcast or directly with you.